Out of all the number 1 picks in NBA history, Markelle Fultz has arguably the weirdest career ever. Yet, out of all first overall picks in the league, he's the least talked about. Is he a bust, or is there hope for him becoming an all-star? This is the rise, fall, and rise again of Markelle Fultz. Markelle's odds of making the NBA were always super slim, just like he was. His coaches nicknamed him Bambi because of his skinny legs and bony knees. His knees were so frail that Markelle would be in pain if he played too much. And because Fultz, as a high school sophomore, was only 5'9", he got cut from the varsity team. However, over the summer, Bambi grew to 6'3", and suddenly he could run like a full-grown deer. Fultz returned to the varsity team and became the Washington Conference Player of the Year, a 2-time conference champion, and a McDonald's All-American. Markelle then represented Team USA at the Under-18 World Championship in Chile, where the Americans won the gold, and Fultz took home the tournament MVP. He chose to stay home and play for the University of Washington, where he averaged 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, shooting over 40% for 3. In a stacked draft that also included Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, Lauri Markkanen, and Lonzo Ball, among many other quality players, there was little doubt about who was going to go number 1. Fultz had no real weaknesses in his game. If the team clogged the paint, he'd kill him with his outside shot, either from 3 or from the mid-range. If they guarded him tight, he had the athleticism, ball handling, and all kinds of herky-jerky, pace-changing moves to shake off his defender and get to the cup. If the opponent doubled Fultz, he was more than capable of setting up his teammates. Proficiency in the pick and roll, crossovers, hesitations, rebounding, defense, you name it. Fultz could do it all, and he was often compared to Damian Lillard. A week before the draft, Markelle worked out with the Philadelphia 76ers, and their decision was made. They had to get this guy. The 76ers were so in love with his talent that they decided to trade up in the draft to get the number 1 overall pick, which the Celtics owned. In return, Philly gave up the number 3 pick and their 2018 first-rounder to Boston. It wasn't a small price, but the 76ers didn't care, and all they wanted was Fultz. And that's how Markelle became the
first pick in the 2017 NBA Draft, Markelle Fultz from the University of Washington.
In the 4 years prior to drafting Markelle, Philly had a 75-253 record, a 23% win rate, by far the worst in the NBA. After years of tanking and high lottery picks, Fultz was supposed to be the perfect fit with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. In theory, their 3 golden pieces complemented each other perfectly. It didn't matter that Simmons couldn't shoot because Embiid and Fultz could. It didn't matter that Fultz sometimes gambled for steals because he had Ben and JoJo behind him. But then, in September of 2017, just a few months after the draft, the bizarro train surrounding Markelle Fultz had left the station. Before the Sixers had started their training camp, Markelle's longtime coach and mentor, Keith Williams, had noticed something extremely unusual. His prized pupil had a noticeable change in his jump shot, with Fultz's release point now starting at his chest and not above his head as usual. When Williams asked about the funky release, Fultz told him, "It feels like somebody's holding my arms down." When the training camp started, Sixers coach Brett Brown acknowledged that Fultz had changed his shooting form since the draft, but nothing was alarming yet. After all, many young players tinker with their shooting form earlier in their careers. But then the preseason started, and it seemed like Fultz's jump shot changed again, looking completely discombobulated and ineffective. Brown publicly admitted that he was not happy with Markelle's new shooting form, and Fultz said it was because he was feeling soreness in his shoulder. On October 18th, Fultz had his NBA debut, with 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist in 18 minutes of play. In his first 4 games and 76 total minutes, Fultz averaged 6 points on 33% shooting, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. He didn't attempt a single three-pointer, and he shot 50% from the free throw line, one of the worst marks in the entire NBA. His shooting struggles quickly made headlines in the media because it was truly one of the most bizarre things in the history of the NBA. In the space of 3 months, Fultz went from a fast, compact, and most of all, precise shooting stroke to an ugly, twitchy, poor excuse for a jump shot.
He's been terrible. And if he's been terrible because his shoulder hurts, then take care of his shoulder, which is, I think, what they're going to do right now.
Some people's first idea was that his shooting touch was stolen by monstars from Space Jam. Others joked that he developed a glitch in his shot, similar to Charles Barkley's crooked golf swing. This situation quickly became the biggest mystery in the NBA, and just like Waldo, people kept asking, where is Markelle's jumper? Because he certainly couldn't find it. Different people started saying different things about this case, and it was tough to grasp what was true and what wasn't.
He's got a lot of personal things that's going on that have nothing to do with basketball that has drastically affected his ability to play basketball.
On October 5th, Raymond Brothers, Fultz's agent, said Fultz had fluid drained from his shoulder before the season began. On October 24th, Brothers retracted from his earlier statement, saying Fultz had fluid put in, not taken out. On October 29th, Philadelphia ruled out Fultz indefinitely, citing soreness and scapular muscle imbalance in his right shoulder. On November 19th, Fultz saw a shoulder specialist who said that the soreness is dissipating and the muscle balance is improving, and Fultz will continue with physiotherapy and begin progressing toward full basketball activities.
His shoulder is one thing. Psychologically, he also needs help.
On January 17, 2018, a video of Fultz shooting in practice surfaced, with another attempt to change his form, but still looking far from natural. On February 6th, Fultz publicly admitted to having to relearn a functional shot, and we could see him practicing shots from the paint like he was a basketball beginner. And then Philadelphia finally reintegrated Markelle into the team for the final 10 games of the regular season.
Markelle Fultz will play tonight.
And he averaged 7 points on 42% shooting, 3 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. He shot an abysmal 44% from the free throw line and attempted just 1 three-pointer. However, on April 11th, at the age of 19 years old and 317 days, Fultz became the youngest player in NBA history at the time to record a triple-double, putting up 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists in a 130-95 win over the Milwaukee Bucks. Fultz then played in 3 playoff games against Miami for a total of 23 minutes. In Game 1, he shot 1 for 4. In Game 2, he went 0 for 3. And in Game 3, he didn't shoot at all. And that's how the first overall pick finished his rookie season. 0 points, 0 shots, with a jump shot that looked worse than a rec league kid. In the offseason, Markelle hired the famous shooting guru Drew Hanlon to help him with his shot.
It was a very productive summer. I'm happy with the work I put in with Drew. You know, we put up a lot of shots, a lot of hours in the gym, and I'm happy where I'm at right now going into training camp.
But several weeks later, Hanlon and Fultz had a public fight, with each one blaming the other for the lack of success. Hanlon said that Markelle had the yips, that he completely forgot how to shoot and had multiple hitches in his shot. Fultz said that it was all because of an injury, and the duo continued to have a rocky relationship, and Fultz eventually fired the shooting coach. In September of 2018, before the start of his second training camp, Fultz said that his injury was gone, and that his shooting form had returned to its original state, and that his jumper was better than ever. In his second game of the season, Markelle made his first career three-pointer, which made the Sixers fans ecstatic. But despite some layers of success, his game was far from okay. In the first 19 games of the season, Fultz averaged 8 3-and-3, and his free throws, threes, or any kind of jumper was still awful. As his shots kept missing the target, the chaos around him grew exponentially. The relationship with his private coaches, Brett Brown, and general manager Jerry Colangelo got messy and confusing, with everybody saying different things to the media. And for all the people who still believed his talents were stolen by Space Jam monstars,
I got his talent.
Their theory gained traction when Fultz had spasms and glitches in his body in a game against Memphis. But in reality, Markelle's diagnosis came about a month later. It was revealed that Fultz suffered from thoracic outlet syndrome, which is a space between the collarbone and the first rib, where nerves and blood vessels connect the arm with the brain. With this syndrome, the collarbone and the rib compress all the nerves and blood vessels, which can cause numbness and muscle weakness in the arm. And although it wasn't ideal, it cleared the air around Markelle. Nobody believed that he was crazy anymore, or that he had the yips. However, identifying the problem was a small relief, because it was still a huge problem. Fultz got stuck on the bench, and after a few months, he asked for a trade. On February 7, 2019, Fultz was traded to the Orlando Magic in exchange for Jonathan Simmons and 2 picks.
He washed his hands with Philly. Hopefully we could get a guy that's humble and can be healthy and be the number 1 pick that, we thought he would be.
Philly was getting 20 cents on the dollar, but they were happy to get rid of all the drama. For the Magic, it was a low-risk, high-reward kind of scenario, and they were hoping he'd fix his issues and fulfill his potential. But when he got to Orlando, they decided to shut him down for the rest of the season and give him time to recover. Fultz played his first game for the Magic in October 2019, finishing with 12 points and 6 assists. He appeared in 60 of 72 games for the Magic and was reasonably effective. Not LeBron James productive, not at an all-star level, but he was decent. Fultz averaged 12 points and 5 assists per game, even making some threes, or at least showing the willingness to shoot them. But most of the time, Fultz played within his means and stuck to what he did well without taking too many jumpers. He was great in transition, finishing around the rim, or setting up teammates. And because Orlando's management had great belief in him and his work ethic, they gave Fultz a $50 million 4-year extension. For comparison, Steph Curry's second contract was worth $44 million. So when the next season started, Fultz again had big expectations ahead of him. But again, health wasn't on his side. After just 8 games where he averaged 13 points and 5 assists per game, Fultz tore his ACL and was done for the season. His recovery was longer than some people expected, and in 2022 he played just 18 games, finishing with 11 points and 5 assists in 20 minutes on the court.
If you ask anybody what's the thing they love the most and ask them how does it feel to be taken away from you, it's tough. I just wanted to go out there. If I had no arms, I would still want to play basketball.
So for the first 5 seasons in the league, he played 131 out of a possible 410 games, which is less than 30%, and one of the worst marks ever for a number 1 pick. He averaged under 11 points and 5 assists per game in 25 minutes on the court, and his pedigree as a shooter was long forgotten. But Fultz wasn't done, and he refused to settle as a bust.
Just make sure I have fun, because you never know when it's going to end. You never know when it's going to be the last time playing. So my biggest thing is when I go on the floor is have fun and compete at a high level.
For the 22-23 season, he came back more ready than ever, and it showed. Fultz averaged career highs across the board, averaging 14 points, 6 assists, and 1.5 steals in 29 minutes per game. He shot a very efficient 51% from the field and a solid 78% from the line and 31% from 3. His shot still looks kind of crooked, but nowhere near as ugly as it was in Philadelphia, and Fultz has gotten more comfortable with it. His mid-range game is one of the best in the NBA, and he hit 40% of his middies in the past season. On top of his offense, he's been a solid defender as well, proving that he'll be an NBA player in years to come. But despite the notoriety of the number 1 pick, Fultz is almost never talked about in the NBA media cycle. It feels like, outside of Orlando, people don't even know he exists.
You know what? I forgot all about Markelle Fultz.
Well, that's what maybe they're hoping.
And this is what makes his case particularly strange. If Fultz came into the league and played poorly, he wouldn't be the first number 1 pick to do so. Anthony Bennett, Michael Olowokandi, and Kwame Brown are just a few of the players who fall into this group, as NBA GMs simply overvalued their success in high school and college and wrongly believed their talent would translate to the NBA. There are also other high draft picks whose careers got destroyed by injuries, most notably Greg Odom, Sam Bowie, or Bill Walton. But nobody in NBA history forgot how to shoot. No lottery pick came to the NBA with shooting as his strength and then couldn't hit a free throw. Fultz's game completely changed, and he became this crooked version of himself with a broken jumper and trashed confidence. From the first pick of the draft, Fultz became a player who would have problems playing in the G League. It's very hard to diagnose thoracic outlet syndrome because it isn't very detectable by MRI or a CAT scan. That's why I and the doctors thought nothing was going on. I just kept working, which made it worse. I went from shooting 40% in college to coming into the NBA without a jumper. People were like, he changed his shot. Like, what would I change my shot for? There's no reason. After the diagnosis, he had to completely rework and remodel his game, his jump shot, and his place in the NBA. After he succeeded, he tore up his ACL, only to come back from it stronger and better than ever. Markelle's road was unlike anything we've seen before in the NBA, and sports in general. We don't know the extent of his shoulder mobility, and if he's ever going to shoot 40% from 3, but we are rooting for him. If he stays healthy, he's got the athleticism and the tools to be a solid role player for the next 10 years. If he gets his shoulder where it was, he might still prove everyone wrong and start hitting threes in bunches. And that would be one of the most beautiful comeback stories in recent NBA history.